Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for September 30th. Before I go any farther, I really need to thank the commenters, the people who, as I referenced, private readings and my availability and stuff in one of my more recent videos, some of the comments, the referrals, the accolades, the amazing references were incredible. Thank you so very much. They just, you know, it's really nice to just kind of feel as if the product that I'm offering is well received and liked and appreciated. And so I can't thank you enough. For those of you who might be interested in booking a private reading, I'm currently booking beginning of November, so about a month. And there's information in the Dropbox below, or just simply send me an email at soulanswers888@gmail.com. All right. Also, to the donors, thank you very much. Your generosity always humbles me. It really does. So thank you very much for that. I'm hoping now that my camera screen is a little more clear than it was. I swear I don't know what happened. I actually think one of the cats must have licked the camera lens. Because it really was getting very fuzzy and foggy there. So it looks to me like it's the picture sharper again. So hopefully that's a good thing and has resolved that issue. So the bigger issue that I want to look at today really has to do with Trump and the extremes. And what's prompting this is a couple of things, right? Earlier this week, we have that Stuart Rhodes, so the head of the Oath Keepers, and I think it's 4 other defendants. The jury selection was started on that trial. They're all pleading, not guilty. They're all basically saying this sort of kind of crazy story about, well, if Trump was going to enact the Insurrection Act, we wanted to be ready to go, except even if Trump had foolishly attempted to enact the Insurrection Act, they would not have been who would have got called. So these people are just where they're at, right? And then, of course, you have the Q people who Trump is embracing. So, he never actually denied them, but he's become so much more overt lately about really embracing them. And so I want to take a look sort of in a broad sense about the relationship between Trump and those extremist organizations. I'm more focusing on Q, but I'll get what I get, right, in terms of information and insights. But honestly, whether it is the Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys or Q, they all have kind of a very similar baseline. And so I want to kind of take a look at that. Now, listen, before I get started, take comfort from the fact that it really, and I always say this because the number I get shown is so sharp and clear in my head. It is somewhere between 25 and 30% of Americans who are all in with Trump. And it doesn't matter, okay? It just doesn't matter. But as somebody pointed out recently, that's okay because 25 to 30% is the same number of people who think that I live in an igloo because I live in Canada. So I think I don't think that your country has managed to survive for a really long time with 25% of people thinking that everybody, north of the 49th parallel is in an igloo, okay? So my thing is that you're going to survive this too. Okay. Boy, some of the temperatures we had this summer, I'm telling you, it was really warm out here. There are periods of real heat, like high 90s, right? That kind of temperatures. I don't think the igloo would have survived. don't know. I've never actually built one and or lived in one, but come on down. I have a question. Okay, here we go. So, Trump and extremes. Trump and extremes. Trump and extremes. What is the story there? It was interesting that they passed something, I believe it was in the House. No, it was in the Senate because McConnell supported it, basically clarifying the role of the vice president, taking the electoral count so that they have blocked one of the made up pretend avenues that they were trying to push their way through around the electoral college votes in January 6th. So that road in any case has been blocked off. God knows there's still a lot more work to be done, but let's see. Tell me about Donald Trump and the extremists. Okay, well, that's a good start, I guess. We've got the devil. We've got the Knight of Wands. We have the Two of Cups and we have the Ten of Swords. Okay, so this is kind of where we're at, right? They are who he has left. Literally. His connection, his relationship, his partnering, his perhaps not really, really overtly, but overtly expressing his support for that kind of extremism, whether it is the fantasy land of the Q people or it is the sort of militia extreme with like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and the 3%ers and whoever else is out there. These have been partnerships created or forged by him because he really does see these groups as sort of one, unfortunately and sadly, he sees them as being most susceptible to the grift. And two, he sees the militias who are just always ready to go to war about everything and overthrow the government. He sees them as a means to an end. Okay. So whether he did or didn't embrace them early in his presidency, certainly as it got towards the end and the news was not getting good and he looked like he probably wasn't going to win, that embrace became more and more sort of fortified or strengthened. So literally the devil and the Two of Cups are telling the story, right? It is about this is who is left in his corner. And yeah, you've got some Republicans still parroting what he says, and you have a whole lot of people who are up for election in literally, a few weeks' time, who are election deniers, et cetera, although it's interesting that some of them are kind of walking back some of their rhetoric as they see that Trump's hold is diminishing. He is losing popularity. He's losing support. So, kind of, this was a partnership, a deal with the devil. Okay, it really, really is what is going on there. So, part of the reason was that he really felt that they would support his message because his message at its base is about grievances, right? It's about, you poor white people, your country's been taken away from you. Let's harness the rage and the hurt and the anger and the frustration And let's actually build that into a movement, which is what he did. Okay. And so people who are inclined to connect with extremist movements and or conspiracy like theories kind of go into it already with a little bit of, a chip on their shoulder, if you will. They're already angry. They're already unsatisfied. They're already frustrated. And along comes somebody and says, here, let me tell you I understand. Let me tell you I recognize your pain, which is a load of crap because he does not live the life of some, disenfranchised person in the Midwest because, automation took their jobs or we're moving away from, the coal industry, right? I mean, but somehow through the magic of magic, maybe he just thought it. Um, he convinced them that he was on the same page with them and he was going to be their champion and he was going to fight for them. And they bought into it. It's a thing about people who actually think reality television is real, right? They believed he was who they saw on The Apprentice. They believed he was this crazy, crazy successful real estate tycoon. And they didn't bother to look below, beneath the surface to the bankruptcies and to the cruelty of his behavior. And the fact that very often the people he stiffed for payment were that middle class, where they're coming from. And so what happened was that, and what is happening is this thing is building up momentum and building up momentum. The problem is that more and more, as more and more come out, as there are more and more trials, it sort of puts him almost in a more defensive position. He's trying to retain the high ground that he had, I don't know, in his glory days, okay? But the reality is that it's getting harder and harder for him to retain that high ground because more and more keeps coming out as stuff unfolds. And whether it is, testimony in trials, whether it is the January 6th committee, whether it is the Department of Justice, whether it is Georgia, whether it is New York, there is just so much information coming out that makes it very, very hard for him to try to keep his footing. And the information is not going to slow down. And the reality is the more he gets bombarded with this stuff, the more he is going to pivot and gravitate to those people who are going to believe that he is the chosen one and whatever comes out of his mouth sits right up there, with the Gospel of John. Okay. They just aren't going to let go because if they let go, they have to face the reality that honestly, they were gaslit. They were fooled. They were, taken advantage of. And they don't want to do that. And honestly, who wants to do that? Who wants to admit, yeah, you know what? I was such a sucker. I really didn't see the writing on the wall, even when everybody was telling me to wake up and smell the roses. So there is a real passion for the people who believe what he says to continue to believe it. It has become their identity. And for him, it is equally important that these people continue to absolutely believe everything he says because this is his grift, this is his deal. And now this is the only strong support he has. Okay. It's about the money, people. It's always been about the money with him. It always will be about the money with him. And, he has been really able to keep those small cash donors, just continuing to send in that money. Although, from what I can figure out energetically, it looks like even that is starting to diminish a little bit. Well, listen, he is in no, he's not in any dire straits yet. Okay, I'll say it that way. Financially, he's been hurt, but he hasn't been knocked out. So for him, it's about going to whichever crowd is going to continue to support not only him monetarily, but his ideas, and most important, his delusions. Because at the base of it, he is trying to return to that place and space where his ego was stroked the most, and that was the presidency. Okay, that was when um, people simply had to listen to him. People simply had to defer to him. And honestly, that had been going on all of his life if you listen to some of the people who have worked with Trump previously. But this was like on steroids. This was the world that had to listen. This was the whole country that had to listen. This wasn't a few rinky-dink employees in some, office building in some tower in New York. This was the big time. And his ego will never, ever get that satisfaction again. But he is having literally the devil's old time walking away from it, because this was the best it ever was. Okay. He was able to ride above all the stuff that would have taken someone else down. He was just able to ride above it. And that kind of power, that kind of ego reinforcement, it's got to be awful heady stuff. He doesn't want to let go of it. And as he sees it diminishing, he recognizes on some level that the only place he can go to get the cheers and the applause and the adoration is with Q and with those militia extremists, with that extreme right wing. And I don't even know. I mean, that's what the Republican Party has become now, right? And so he's not going to let go. And the more the Republican Party kind of wishes he would shut up and go away, the more resistant he is going to be to that idea. One, because, first of all, nobody ever tells him what to do in the first place. But secondly, because on some part of his brain, some understanding, he knows that that is where the force is. That is where the energy is that's going to keep him in the light, in that spotlight. And his emotions, they're primary. How he feels, how he reacts to things around him. And his emotions right now he is in such a state because truly the walls are closing in on him. And what's happening is that things that used to work, okay, and we know this. One of Trump's favorite tactics was to delay, particularly when it came to court cases. That was his strength, right? He just delayed and delayed and delayed. And then honestly, almost always he ended up, making a settlement. Well, it doesn't look like people are, one, too anxious to make settlements with him. And two, somewhere along the way, he didn't quite get clarity on the fact that when it is like a federal charge, there are some things that you don't make settlements on. There are some things that there's actually punishment for. So the thing that sustained him is no longer working for him. I mean, bless Judge Geary. He ain't putting up with no crap from nobody. And, again, that was a situation where he was going to play his strength card, which was to demand this special master because, they needed time. They needed time. They needed to stretch it all out. Well, the special master is, yeah, you know what? I don't think so. I'm going to treat you just like every other defendant. And the thing is really, in terms of the special master, Trump is actually the plaintiff, not the defendant. And so there are obligations that he has to adhere to. And the judge is kind of saying, well, that's it. That's the deal. That's what happens when you're the plaintiff. And so he's not winning. Everywhere he turns, he's not winning. And his emotions are becoming more and more fraught. They're becoming more extreme. He's starting to really, really feel the pressure of the walls coming in on him, and the support is not there for him the way it was. And so he's in a position where his strength strategies aren't working, and the support is diminishing. And he truly fears that the law is going to end him. And I don't know that that means, like, it's not like he's gonna, get shot by the government. Okay, it's not that. But his life as he knows it, his perceptions as he knew them, are under attack right now. And he's really frightened that it's going to become amplified. It's going to become more and more and more. And he's not going to be able to control it because the things that used to work for him simply aren't working as well anymore. I mean, when somebody goes on television and says, no, I just have to think it. And I can just declassify documents. There doesn't need to be a process. I just need to think it in my screwy little delusional mind. And it is so. Where do you go from there? Like honestly, where do you go from there? And even though sometimes it can be frustrating, understand that there are agencies, prosecutors, investigators who are working very diligently to try to understand, get control of, create an environment where that fiery sort of energy, the anger, the rage is sort of lessened or diminished. So the question is, with Donald Trump as the de facto leader of, honestly, of Q and of the militias and of the right wing extremists, where does it go from here? Well, where it goes is he is going to continue to keep them fired up. He is going to continue to say whatever needs to be said to feed his ever so fragile ego. He is going to continue to stay in a place where he is going to continue to sort of try and maintain the position of king, because let's face it, he never actually wanted to be president. He is going to keep pushing that energy because, listen, it is all he has right now. But no matter how you shake it, it's going to come to an end. And if we look at, the Nine of Pentacles here, sort of in its kind of in its reverse, this is about a diminishment of his independence, about a diminishment of his wealth, a diminishment of his success and his luxurious surroundings and his luxurious life. He's not happy about it. But guess what? Sometimes what makes you happy just isn't going to happen. And sometimes what happens is that you have a series of disappointments, of setbacks, of hardships, of even ill health, cruelty. And that becomes the judgment that is passed. That's the judgment that's coming. Because women aren't going to put up with it. And because there will be an understanding or recognition that he has stolen quite enough from the country and the people. And that the people that he most associates with, most identifies with, it's not the Oath Keepers and it's not the Q people. It's the Kim Jong-uns. Okay, that's who he resonates to. And right now, the country of America is working very, very hard at pushing back against that kind of energy and that kind of attitudes, that kind of governing, pushing back against that and saying, no, that is not who we are and what we represent in this country. We have more hope than that. And we're going to win this sort of struggle to regain and to claim democracy. Okay, so that's kind of where that is at. Speaking of which, do not forget that the Shine Your Light Energy Circle that was released last week, it's still up. Feel free to return to it as often as you would like. Do it as often as you would like. It's always super helpful. And next week, I will be putting out sort of a second video on the Shine Your Light Energy Circle. And we'll get cracking on that one and move our energy up to the next level. I think it's going to be about people who can see, let them see clearly. People who can hear, let them hear clearly. Let us open up the hearts and minds of people who are not yet focused or don't want to listen or hear. I think that's where that's going to go. If you have some thoughts, please put them in the comment section because I'll go through them and incorporate what I can. Okay, it's a weekend. Have a good one. Take care. Be well. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.